The Batman Arkham franchise has a long and complicated history of development, and today we are going to be taking a look at the rejected Batman Arkham Knight sequel that would have taken much inspiration from things such as Batman Beyond. But wait, before we start, we have a super special announcement here because we have a sponsorship. We are partnered today with Opera GX. This is one I'm actually really excited about. I hope you can tell from the tone of my voice because I have been using Opera's normal web browser forever. People always come in my room and they say, what is that? What are you looking, what web browser are you using? And I always say I'm using Opera, but they now have Opera GX. This is a web browser designed for gaming and gamers, which is really cool and really exciting if you love playing games on your PC like I do. The GX control actually helps enhance the performance on your PC when you're gaming with your browser open. This is something I do a lot, especially if I need to look something up, and it helps get rid of lag while playing games and listening to your music. Maybe you're just chilling, you're playing a game casually, listening to music, gotta look something up, answering on Discord. These are all different integrations that this browser has. It's perfect when you want to keep many different tabs open and not lose them, but you don't want your browser to hurt gaming performance. Opera GX really helps you limit that and control your gaming experience. It lets you limit the CPU or RAM they are willing to let the browser use. There is also a network limiter which limits the network bandwidth used by Opera GX to gain performance in games and streams. This web browser also really helps with accessibility, which is just awesome. Like I said, you can chat and browse simultaneously with social media channels like Facebook Messenger, Telegram, WhatsApp. It's all here. There's actually like integration for everything. Discord, it's crazy, and it allows you to keep all your social media at hand in your browser and get notifications from all social media apps you use. This is something that's definitely going to help me because, as anyone who has tried to talk to me in the past knows, I have a hard time responding. Opera GX allows you to keep in touch with your friends while enjoying your favorite games, which is really cool. You can log into the three apps Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music directly from the sidebar in Opera GX, and it lets you keep your favorite streaming services all in one place. Whenever you start streaming video or audio in your browser tabs, it automatically pauses and then automatically resumes once that tab is finished. There's all kinds of amazing features with Opera GX, and it's worth mentioning too that there is even a mobile version for my friends who love using their phones, who love gaming, and also do want to check it on their phone or do want to have that extra device available. It's easy to do. It's on mobile and it can be connected and synced up to the desktop version very easily. So be sure to check out Opera GX. I do have a personal link down below, both in the video description and the pinned comment, so you can check this out. It is awesome, it is fantastic, and thank you so much to Opera GX for helping this channel keep on trucking on. Let's hop into the video. Now, with Batman Arkham Legacy, Batman Arkham Insurgency, Batman Arkham, it pretty much had every name under the sun thrown out there on the internet. It's worth noting that this whole franchise has always been ripe with speculation and a rabid fan base who always wants more, and that rumors and leaks persisted for years following Arkham Knight's release back in 2015. It's been a long time and there's a lot to cover. Some of these leaks were credible while others were not, and some were completely unconfirmed, but even those that were credible only held part of the supposed story that happens to be this game. That's why I wanted to take a second, I guess a few minutes, and sort of break down and give a timeline on what we could have seen, how the information released, and everything that we knew, because it paints a picture of a very troubled development that ended up changing hands, being reworked and rebooted several times. That's a very interesting story, and each piece gives part of the whole puzzle. It's worth noting that the Batman Arkham leaks for a sequel started immediately after the release of Knight. I will include all sources that I have used in the description down below, so if you want to vet anything for yourself or do your own research, please do. One of the first leaks with any actual prominence behind it that gained traction was in 2017, actually early on in the year, a little under 2 years after the launch of Batman Arkham Knight, Batman Arkham Insurgency. This is something that we have reported on in the past. It's something that I long since believed false and completely fake without merit. However, there is some proof that this was originally a concept, which we will get to. According to the coverage of the defunct thread that had been posted at this time, the game had been in development since 2014 prior to the launch of Arkham Knight, and it took place 3 years after the events of Batman Arkham Origins. This was not actually a Knight sequel, but an Origins sequel, and it was believed to be coming out in November of 2017, but the employee who initiated the leak didn't rule out the possibility of it being delayed either. It's important to note as well that this was set to take place in a new coastal area of Gotham that was the same size as the 3 islands from 2015's Arkham Knight. The Batmobile was set to return without battle mode, and combat would take place merely in chases when it came to vehicle portions, considering that Batman had not created that battle mode for his Batmobile yet. It was not the Bat tank, it was just the car. Now, there was not a lot of confirmation and not much more said about this leak. It was inevitably ruled out as just fake. However, it would later rear its head again because there are more pieces to this puzzle, and you're going to see how they all interconnect. Arkham Insurgency would disappear for quite a while, a handful of years, until it would pop up again mysteriously in 2020, which we'll talk about in a bit, but it's worth noting that these rumors, this leak, was inevitably written off by the community and other insiders as false. It was written off as something that didn't actually pan out or matter. If there was any proof of it ever existing, that hasn't surfaced much, save for one thing we'll talk about in a bit. But in 2019, 2 years later, concept art from a Batman Arkham follow-up was released. This was leaked on 4chan, the message board that is infamous on the internet, up there with Reddit, and it was now labeled as Project Sabbath, these pieces of art and this project. This is the name it would be known as going forward for a long time, and there were additional details about the characters and the setting, and it was now an Arkham Knight sequel, not an Arkham Origins sequel. Supposedly included in this game would be the Batbike, a rundown Gotham, Two-Face, known as the Judge in this continuity, Gorilla Grodd, Flamingo, a female version of the Black Mask, which many speculated would be the daughter of Roman Sionis, the Penguin, back again, Dick Grayson, although no one was certain whether or not he was set to be Nightwing, an old Bruce Wayne who was retired as Batman, and the Nemesis System, which was prominent from the Shadow of Middle-earth games, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. So that was something very interesting, and the receipts were there for this leak. Considering that someone came in with full, detailed, fully rendered concept art from the project featuring these characters in high detail with Project Sabbath being labeled on each of them, this was something that would have been a little hard to fake, and it was actually spread around the gaming circles prominently. This was the first time that someone showed up with any receipts, with any proof for any of the rumors that they had. It's worth noting that also after this in 2019, on October, there was a prominent leaker in the games industry, WB Games, who I always say their name wrong, I am sorry, and this person had their own leaks about the game. It's important to note that anyone can leak, however, this person did have a track record of being accurate. Something that I think people often overlook when they're looking at video game leaks is the history of accuracy from the leaker. WB Games had been so accurate that they had been threatened with litigation and a cease and desist from Nintendo for leaking projects and other things. And they also had leaked Telltale's Batman Shadows Edition before that launched as well, inevitably, so it's worth noting this person did have a prominent history in the industry. They went on to say, I should note the title of Arkham Legacy could change. The info is from a bit ago, but the topic of the game, the family, and whatnot are obviously the important element. Not sure what the reveal is. or when the reveal is. The Game Awards are plausible, otherwise could be anytime next year. Not going to say anything else because WB can be kind of scary. Now, worth noting again that this is where we are starting to call it Arkham Legacy instead of Project Sabbath and instead of Arkham Insurgency. The name for what would be believed to be the Arkham follow-up would change a lot over time, and Savvy had mentioned this project prior, but I think that this is the most detailed and I guess interesting breakdown from their account. Like all of these, there are tons of leaks from every individual leaker that we could go over, but it would take us hours and we don't have that time. However, in 2020, Wabi Sabi would appear again with a new piece of information saying that they had talked to multiple people on the game and that the new Batman game does seem to be a reboot. The name also changed during development. On the bright side, the Court of Owls is still a big focus, as I said before. Worth noting that this definitely did have some level of credibility, as Scott Snyder, the writer of Batman Court of Owls, had since been having a hard time on social media keeping his mouth shut and had been hinting at a Court of Owls Batman game of some sort over the years as well, which I will show on screen. And it was just building momentum. These rumors, these allegations of a game that was either scrapped or rebooted at some point or still being made, they were gaining prominence. It was then revealed by James Sigfield. He was another prominent video game industry leaker who had a track record of being right several times about the follow-up Arkham Knight situation. He said that there was a Superman game likely originally planned as a follow-up to Arkham Knight. This is both speculation and also from his knowledge of things that he had leaked and been told, but he did say hearing from multiple sources that Rocksteady pitched a Superman game to WB as a follow-up to Arkham Knight, and WB passed on the project. Judging how similar this feels to the new Gotham section of Arkham Knight, this could be for that. And it's worth noting that he did show a prominently leaked Superman game concept art image from the time. We reported on this game, this canceled game, at least once, I believe maybe twice, with additional details on this channel. It's something that's very interesting and could have actually originally taken place in the Arkham universe as well. Now, at this time, connections started building up to what would be known as the Nemesis System. This system that mattered a ton in gaming because it pushed forward the idea of interactivity with villains, with NPCs in the world, and created its own mini stories as a player played a game. These were again very famous from the Middle-earth games, Shadow of Mordor and eventually Shadow of War. These involve you going out in a world and say maybe you beat an enemy, they can advance or fall through the ranks. If someone beats you, they go from being a normal NPC to someone who matters on the Nemesis board and actually making something of themselves. And you were able to interact in missions with these characters and either bring them to your side or not in the Shadow of Middle-earth games. So this system was very revolutionary at the time, and it really did push forward the idea of interactivity with NPCs. The fact that a normal NPC in the Shadow of Middle-earth games could beat you and make something of themselves, or humiliate you, or you could go back and humiliate them. You could give someone a scar that they would then comment on in your next encounter with them. This system was very in-depth. So what I'm getting at here is the thought process for fans of this being connected to an Arkham game was very, very exciting at the time, considering that WB was prominently known for Arkham and the Shadow of Middle-earth games. So combining those two ideas was very interesting. And the Comics Kid on Twitter, another leaker with a lot of credibility under his belt, did point out that they had heard that the new Batman game from someone who worked on it was that the Bat family was playable. There were multiple factions and a Nemesis system that included the GCPD. The Court of Owls were the main antagonist of the game, and it did have connections to other games. So this was something posted actually on June 30th of 2020, and what's really interesting about this to me is that it did sort of usher in an era with this game where everybody believed the Nemesis system would be in it. It would be prominent. You would be able to go around as Batman and actually take place in a branching Gotham with some sort of crime lords or some sort of thugs that would move up the ranks, and you as Batman would be personally taking on that war on crime. There were a ton of speculations about how this would be done. Maybe you would have informants instead of somebody like how Talia is able to brainwash with the Wraith Celebrimbor and take over Sauron's army in the Middle-earth games. A lot of the speculation was that because Batman's not a brainwasher, he would use fear to win people over to his side or use them to his advantage to work his way through crime in Gotham and destroy it from the inside out. There were tons and tons of theories on how this would be done, nothing concrete, but this was the second prominent time the Nemesis system had come up. However, in reveals since this, Patrick Redding, who is the creative director of Gotham Knights, revealed that this system will not be in that final game, but a different system that allows criminal factions to commit crimes and interact with players will be, leaving this as yet another piece of information that is likely left over from early stages of previous versions of this Batman game. As noted from the YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming, there have always been connections to the Nemesis system between Batman and this system itself, because originally Monolith was going to create their own Batman game. Monolith Studios, who created Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, was making Project Apollo. They were trying to get this off the ground. It was originally a Christopher Nolan Batman Dark Knight game that was going to feature a story in a sprawling world described by one ex-developer as similar to the Insomniac Spider-Man game, but for Batman himself. This game was developed into 2011, but Christopher Nolan reportedly never gave the go-ahead on the game. Some said that he had no interest in this, while others said that he held animosity for the mediocre Batman Begins video game title, along with a canceled Dark Knight game from Pandemic Brisbane that never made it off the ground. This game would later be canceled in 2008, and that studio shut down by EA. And it's worth noting that Project Apollo was actually being developed at Monolith alongside a Middle-earth game that also never saw release, Project Hydra, but they faced criticism from WB, who believed that they should rework that game and that it was having issues, and so they actually did just kind of scrap it and start over from the beginning after those criticisms and the ultimate failure of its reveal to WB internally. Some developers told Did You Know Gaming that the combat in Shadow of Mordor originated from Batman's Project Apollo, and the randomized enemy generations were also created for Project Apollo, which were ultimately the building blocks of the Nemesis system. So there always was a tie between Batman and the Nemesis system, and that's worth pointing out. But Comics Kids tweet on its own, along with Wabi Sabi's and others' previous leaking information, did highlight a major problem with news about the supposed Batman Arkham game, which was that no one person had or could have the whole story. This was no fault of their own, as we would find out from Jason Schreier later this year, because he did actually go on in August 7th of 2020 to release some information himself. Jason Schreier is pretty much I would say, the most renowned games journalist that wrote about games, that ever did games journalism. He's one of those people that even when people don't respect him and his opinions, they still respect his sources, the fact that he had industry knowledge and know-how. I know that this figure has come under some controversy since the Activision Blizzard situation, but it's worth noting that he has always had good sources. He did note in 2020 that some added context for today's announcement was that WB Montreal was working on a Suicide Squad game until it was canceled in late 2016. At some point, and then he speculated end of 2016 or 2017, Rocksteady started theirs. The game will be teased at DC Fandom, but I wouldn't expect it for a while. Somebody asked him, this means WB is working on that Court of Owls Batman game? To which he responded, yes, they were doing a Damian Wayne Batman game, but then that was canceled and rebooted as well. WB Montreal's new Batman game should also be at DC Fandom. So this was kind of pointing out an issue with all of these leaks, which was that no one person could have the entire story because they were talking to different people in different levels of gaming and development who had worked for these projects or alongside these projects at different times. Maybe it was someone who passed through the studio and saw something on someone's screen. Maybe it was someone who worked on what was originally going to be a WB Games Montreal Suicide Squad game in its early stages of development back in 2016 until it was canceled. We don't really know, but because each of these leaks were from different people with different sources, there was different bits of the whole coming out, which were then getting jumbled up. You could see that actually as far back as Comics Kids leak, which was that now the leaks were kind of becoming consolidated. Not only did you have the Bat family being playable, which would inevitably happen in Gotham Knights, but you also still had a general plotline or storyline featuring elements of what had been leaked previously as the possible Batman game with the Nemesis System and other things like that. It's worth noting that to this point we had not seen concept art again since its leak way back, but industry artist Jared S. Marantz, who by the way has a beautiful Instagram gallery of his work that I highly recommend you check out over there. I follow him, he is fantastic, he does a lot of cool stuff, posted some on September 1st of 2020. This was what he described as a Batman design he did for a canceled game project. He would go on to share several more looks at the same design with hashtags in the design, including things like Kingdom Come and Arkham. Now it's worth noting that again, this was never confirmed to be the Batman Arkham Legacy / Project Sabbath follow-up, but the general tone of this does fit what we had seen to this point. The character under the cowl does look older and aged. It does look like he is relying on more technology in the Batsuit, even beyond what it was in Batman Arkham Knight. And worth noting again, this logo actually looks like it was inspired a little bit by BVS, but he did go on to clarify this was a canceled game concept art. There were tons of other canceled concept arts revealed by Jared S. Marantz during this time, including one of Parasite from Superman, along with Bizarro. So it is possible that there was some sort of big Justice League team-up game that this was from. We never got confirmation, and I highly doubt Jared S. Marantz could give confirmation of this legally, but he was able to release his art, and my understanding and interpretation of it, again, because we have to read through the lines here a little bit, was that this was from the Arkham game, and that several other pieces were from other projects. There was a King Shark image released, which looked to me like it could have been alongside Batman in that game, but we never got full confirmation other than hashtag Batman in the tags of that post. But what we did see was things like Bizarro and Parasite, which looked more akin to one of the many canceled Superman projects that never made it off the ground that we've covered on this channel. It's worth noting that in 2021, there was a huge leak that actually gave credibility to things going as far back as Arkham Insurgency. In 2021, NVIDIA GeForce, which is one of the biggest companies in PC gaming, had a massive leak and data mine which revealed a lot of potential games that were set to be released. There was something called Batman City Builder on this list, which was listed as a working title. However, Batman Arkham Insurgency was also on this, but its short name was set as Gotham Knights, which is very interesting because it does seem like these projects have morphed over time a ton. It does seem that what was Batman Arkham Insurgency would eventually become Gotham Knights, but that is also up for debate, and I guess up for your interpretation. There was also Suicide Squad game leaked here as well from WB Montreal, which was listed as Suicide Squad Metallica. However, these games never came to fruition. It's worth noting that with this as well, NVIDIA did confirm this list to be legitimate. This isn't something that someone just threw together on a word processor, made blurry, and released into the wild. NVIDIA confirmed that this leak was official. It was real information. However, they threw in that this included speculative games that never were made or were created for internal testing only. But the way it appears to me is that in the gaming industry, even so far as NVIDIA's own GeForce processing units and their own databases, there were there was an understanding that there would be another Batman Arkham game. However, it changed over time several times and eventually became something else. The newest leak and reveal that actually made me want to cover this was from just about a month and a half ago in November of 2021, where renowned concept artist Goran Bukvik released on his ArtStation account what appeared to be actual concept art from this game. Now, this was, again, the second time that we got to see sourced concept art from a renowned concept artist involved in this project, but this one actually fully fit into the overall narrative. While it could be argued that Jared S. Morant's work might have been for something else, it could not be argued that this was for anything but a Batman Arkham Knight follow-up, for several reasons. The first being that we get to see two unique and separate Batmen in this art. We get to see an old, aged Bruce Wayne who is very worn down by time and is clearly using some technology in order to maintain his current physique, including what looks to be leg braces. These are very similar to what we saw in The Dark Knight Returns and also The Dark Knight Rises in order to keep Batman's leg functioning well. This does actually tie into the end of Arkham Knight. We did see a Batman in the end of that game. Now, my opinion before these leaks was that this was an heir to the cowl, that this was someone like Azrael or somebody else taking up the mantle of Batman, because it did look like they were using fear toxin, and I always asked myself if Batman would use even a nerfed version of that in this universe. However, with how violent this Batman is, it does make sense that he would go on to use something like this, very likely one that would not neurologically damage those that he went up against, in order to enhance his war on crime after his identity was leaked. It also does make sense that eventually he would need the extra support of leg braces and other technology that would help him continue to maintain his fight and his war on crime, and it does look like he would have been in his mid to late 50s in this suit, and maybe early 60s, still out there kicking ass, but at the end of the line of what he was capable of. And also we got to see a younger, more vibrant Batman, who not only matched the skin tone of Talia al Ghul with a little bit more of a tan complexion, but also was clearly very younger, using what would be reminiscent of the Batman Beyond suit from the prominent cartoon. This was really interesting because this fit fully into the narrative of Batman Arkham Legacy, of Project Sabbath, and there were several poses shown off for this younger Batman in action, along with a secondary suit which looked much more akin to something like a cross between Batman Arkham Knight's suit and the Dark Knight's suit. It was not a Batman Beyond-esque suit, it was more of a classic traditional Batman suit, but it was still a younger Batman. So with that final one, considering that the skin color is lighter in the more traditional suit, we don't know if this was going to be some kind of flashback to a previous adventure by Bruce Wayne when he was younger or something, but it does still look like Damian Wayne to me with lighter skin tones. And again, we have to read between the lines here, because I think it would be very easy to dismiss this right off the bat, but this was finally sourced by a true concept artist like Jared S. Morantz, except that there was no real question about what it belonged to. This was very clearly the concept art for the project people had been talking about for years, an older Batman passing on the torch in a Batman Beyond style game in the Arkham universe. It's very interesting to see all of this come together, and worth noting that WB had actually set up this game possibly in its previous release, because if you do recall, in Batman Arkham Knight in the Season of Infamy, when you go into the Elliott Memorial Hospital during the Season of Infamy with the Ra's al Ghul storyline, it is worth noting that you can enter the morgue. You do see bodies here, but more importantly, we would see an empty mortuary table, wide open, where Talia al Ghul was supposed to be lying dead. There was still access to Lazarus Pit technology as shown in this DLC, which Ra's al Ghul could have used. He could have been kept alive one more time, or Batman could have let him die. That was one of the big cruxes of that storyline with the Ra's al Ghul storyline in Arkham Knight's Season of Infamy. So with all of that tying together, It's interesting to note that Talia did come back, and there was time for Damian Wayne to have either already been born or yet be born in the future. This door was left open, much like the mortuary table, for a future project or a future storyline, and it was an intentional Easter egg. With all of this said, the story overall is very complicated. It paints a picture of several different games being made both at WB Games Montreal and at Rocksteady, being pitched back and forth and never coming to fruition. These games would go on to be reworked into several different projects, or dropped, or never picked up in the first place. We don't know if this Arkham Legacy Project Sabbath ever got anywhere in development, as nothing has ever leaked about that, but it did get as far as getting concept art and being planned out to include several characters and features. The Nemesis System bits are very interesting to me because it was never fully confirmed or denied by anyone, and anytime a gaming journalist, I guess I would say outlet, has tried to reach out and confirm anything about this project, nobody wants to talk about it. It really does seem to be a case of embarrassment in a lot of ways at Warner Brothers, because there were a lot of leaks around these projects and the Superman projects that show a lot of games that had potential that players actually would have wanted to see that never got picked up. It didn't help that many people were actually very hesitant about Gotham Knights, as well as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the fact that a Batman game had been proven and Superman had been asked for a decade from the same company, and both of these ended up being rejected on the pitch table or got almost nowhere in development, was really sad to see and doesn't seem to be something anyone wants to talk about. I wouldn't be surprised if in future years, I guess in upcoming decades, we get to find out more about this project, we get to hear more details from ex-developers, but as is, it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to open their mouth and talk about it, and certainly the people still at WB making their current games don't want to get into and divulge what could have been, as it would only serve to possibly detract from the sales or the, I guess, hype of their newer games. Think about it. Think about this. You are Rocksteady, or you are WB Games Montreal. The Batman Arkham franchise has sold millions. It has been asked of you to make a Superman game forever, and people want to see more Batman. Both of those are things that people want to see. One is proven, one is a game that people speculatively think that you can make because of your track record. Think of this. WB Games Montreal teased a Suicide Squad project in the closing credits of Batman Arkham Origins. That was already on the table and teased while people were still asking for these other games. Nobody wants to talk about what happened with these games because it is in some ways a story of what could have been. It is a story of games that people demanded and asked for and were really excited to see and hyped for, that never made it far into development and never saw the light of day. Since then, so many leaks have happened, many of them just partial leaks and pieces of the overall story that got confused and combined with other leaks over the years from ex-developers, current developers, and even prominent games journalists and leakers. It's an interesting story of what we could have seen. A Batman Beyond style game with two Batmen taking place with the Nemesis System in the future, but we don't have it. And despite that, I'm still very excited to see what the studios come up with in the future. Do I wish we had seen this? As a fan of the series, I absolutely do. I love this franchise. But I will say that Damian was never exactly built up to in the series other than an Easter egg of Talia still possibly being alive. There wasn't really much in the series to point towards Damian having a potential future or importance in the franchise, and it also could have easily been perceived the same way that something like Arkham Knight was, with including Jason Todd after very little foreshadowing in previous games, almost a grasping at straws. There could be several reasons why these games never saw the light of day. It's sad they didn't. I personally would have preferred to see Terry McGinnis in the same role that they looked to have been putting Damian in, but I don't think I will see any of those things anytime soon. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. This was a ton of research. I researched this for the better part of a week, compiling everything over the years that I thought had some credibility and trying to sort out that information from those that were blatantly false or clout chasing, and also, trying to be as thorough as I could. It was really fun to make, fun to research, but it was a lot of work, and I couldn't make videos like this without my wonderful patrons such as Sean, Jonah, Seth, Ricardo, Michael, Caleb, and Andre. Thank you guys so much. If any of you are interested, the Patreon is home to actually over now 100 exclusive videos that are not accessible here, so I do hope to see you over there. It does help support the channel and big projects like this, so I appreciate it. And thank you again one final time to Opera GX for taking a chance on us, sponsoring us, and making a really awesome web browser that I seriously recommend you check out. Have a fantastic day, everyone. And as always, stay shway.